Right. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the F8 webinar. I am going to wait for a few of the others to join and then we will officially begin. Meanwhile, if you could all please just let me know if any of you accessed the platform yesterday, particularly those who are taking the computer-based exam. Did you have a look at the platform to see what section B would look like? Anyone at all? All right, a little. All right. So guys, please, you have time until Friday. Remember, Friday is the day when I am going to do a bit of an activity where I'll tell you what your examiner wants you. So which functions your examiner wants you to use during the exam. It's nothing too complicated. The best part about F8 is there are no spreadsheets, and therefore you can very easily practice as much as you can. Sarah, okay, does it say 2 attempts allowed? We'll just note that down and then we'll see if you can. Yes, the idea is typing only. There's a voice problem. Are you okay? Bilal, you'll have to check stuff at your own end because I think we're okay from our side. All right, guys, the plan for today is we're going to cover internal control over financial reporting. I am going to minimize the chat box so that we can have a quick go through what we did yesterday. So I'd like you to please not type in your questions until I ask you to do so. So the idea is if we can focus on the content, it'll be easier for us to sort of remember what the key points are. So from yesterday, if you remember, we said that when you are obtaining new assignments, there are about 9 factors that you need to consider. Once you've considered those factors, which include professional etiquette letter, preconditions of an audit, etc., you sign a contract called an engagement letter. So an engagement letter is drafted by the audit firm. It is sent to the client. When the management signs it, you can officially begin. Very, very important. It is always there in your exam. The very first stage of work that we do is something called audit planning. As is obvious from the word, we are planning our work. So we haven't started detailed procedures at all. We're just planning what work needs to be done. So your auditing standards say that your audit planning has to be done in 2 stages. The first thing I have to do is make a strategy or an overall approach. As a part of this strategy, I'm going to understand the client in detail. I'm going to evaluate audit risk, which includes risk of material misstatement as well as detection risk. I am going to determine materiality, and I'm going to work on scope, timing, and direction. Once my approach is in place, I make the detailed plan, which is basically the work that you are going to do step by step. So for example, if sales is a risky area, then you need to plan what works to be done next. With regards to case scenarios or scenario-based questions, within audit risk, you might be given a scenario where you'll have to identify either risk of material misstatement or detection risk or both. So keeping that in mind, for risk of material misstatement, please remember you will not get marks until you tell me which amount or disclosure is under, over, or misstated. So you can't simply say the risk is there would be a breach of law and regulation. That's a 0 mark. You have to tell me because of this breach, which part of the financial statements is under, over, or misstated. You can't say receivables might not pay. So what? What impact will this have on the financial statements? So if you remember, when we were talking about risk of material misstatement, you have to tell me an amount which is under, over, or misstated, or a disclosure which is completely missing or maybe inadequate as well. So let's go back to our original story, guys. So I'm not talking as an F8 person right now. The very simple thing that we've done is at the end of the planning stage, I know which parts of the financial statements have a greater risk of fraud and error. So the risky areas I'm aware of. I'm not saying there's definitely a problem. I'm just saying there's a higher chance that these areas could have fraud or error. Before I go and test those areas in detail, I need to evaluate the way financial statements were made. So please remember that I'm not going to focus on the amounts now. So the account balance or the class of transaction or the disclosure details are not important. Right now, my next step is that I'm going to work on the system of preparing financial statements. The idea is, if the way through which financial statements were made, if that way is good, then there's a lesser chance that there would be problem in that account balance or class of transaction. So the stage that we cover today, again, it is always there in your exams. You need to be very clear on the work that auditors do and also the common terms that are used within this part. So we're done with the planning stage. Planning stage is where we understood what the controls were. I'm now going to evaluate those controls one by one. So our next stage is I'm going to evaluate the system of financial reporting or the system through which financial statements are prepared. Let's go on. Let's start with the technical definition of internal control right now. Like I said, it is just a fancy way of saying the process, the way or the system. So internal control is the process which has been designed, then implemented, and then maintained by those charged with governance. Now, those charged with governance is a term that you use for the entire board or the audit committee. So it's a system which has been first designed, then implemented and maintained by the board of directors so that they have reasonable assurance about the reliability of financial reporting. So the system, having the system in place will give me assurance that yes, their financial reporting is reliable, yes, their operations are effective, and yes, they're complying with laws and regulations. So it's the system through which all of this is done. That's the technical definition of internal control over financial reporting. Now is where I need you guys to wake up, guys. So this is very, very important. Now, as a part of my financial statements, if you remember, I've already gained the understanding. So I've understood the control environment, how the management does the risk assessment, what controls they have in place or control activities, how information is communicated and how it is all monitored. So I've already understood all of that. For F8, it is very important that you are aware of the meaning of these terms which are commonly used in controls. So these are examples of controls which you should be completely aware of as knowledge-based questions as well as for scenario-based questions. So again, I think this is a term or a phrase that is used very frequently. The idea of segregation of duties is that you divide the responsibilities amongst different people. So if the duties or the responsibilities are divided, then there'll be lesser chance that one person can commit fraud or error because someone will be rechecking their work. So sometimes I will be using the word there should be segregation of duties. That simply means work should be divided between different individuals. In particular, so your auditing standards are very clear. There are three terms that they normally use: authorization, recording, and custody. These should be with three different people. So the person who approves the transaction should be separate from the one who's recording this in the financial statements or accounting records, and it should be separate from the one who actually has custody of the asset. So that's the basic idea behind segregation of duties. Another example that you will see very frequently is controls over information processing. Now, your F8 examiner has clearly said that all your questions in internal controls will be primarily automated. So you need to be aware of computerized controls. Again, please be very careful that general controls are separate from application controls. So this should actually be application IT controls. I think there's an error over here. So general controls are separate from application controls. General controls are over the entire IT environment. So for example, do you have passwords? Do you take regular backup? Do you have appropriate firewalls or antivirus software? Application controls focus on the data that is being input and it's being processed by the application. So how do you ensure that the data that is being input into the system is accurate? How do you ensure that it is processed properly and the reports are being made properly? So another example that you will see in these topics is information processing. Another example of a control is authorization. Again, this is very self-explanatory. Please make sure that approval comes from an individual at a senior position. So invoices, payments, etc. need to be approved by senior officials. If a junior level person is doing it, then that's not appropriate control. You should also have, or you could also have physical controls in place. Again, for example, you could have locks, guards, etc., etc. This would prevent maybe theft of physical assets. The client should have regular performance reviews. This is where you should be making your budgets which are approved, and then actual performance should be matched to the budget and a variance analysis done. You should have arithmetical controls in place, and the idea behind arithmetical controls is to check the arithmetical accuracy. So when an invoice is received from a supplier, someone should do the checking to make sure it is calculated, the calculations are correct. There will be so many accounting reconciliations that you will come across. So cash book reconciled to the bank statement, your control account reconciled to the individual account, etc., etc. These are all technical terms from examples of controls that you should be aware of. So if I give you the heading segregation of duties, and if I give you 4 options, you should be able to select which of these explains segregation of duties. A few more terms before we technically start the topic. Again, very commonly used in the F8 exams. I need you to please pay attention. Particularly these 3, they're from the automated environments, computerized environment. Standing data is that data in your computer which does not change frequently. So it's not going to change on a daily or a weekly basis. For example, the name of the customer, or the address of the customer and supplier, or the NIC number of your employees, for example, or your identity card number. So this is all standing data because it does not change frequently. So the idea is it does not change frequently. Then you have something called the master file. The file in which the standing data is stored is called the master file. Why are we studying all of this? Because you should know that the standing data and master file are sensitive information. So access should be restricted to senior officials only. So not everyone should be able to access this data. It should be restricted to senior people only. Exception reporting is another term from the computerized environment. Please remember, when you have data in the computer, it's just so much of it. If you want to extract certain information, you can take out an exception report. So for example, I have 1 million sales transaction data in my computer. So from January to December 2017, there were 1 million transactions across the entire year. I want specific customers' data. So I'm going to give the computer a command that I want an exception report, and therefore I want sales information for customer A only. Or maybe I want an exception report of any receivable which is over 90 days old. So from all the data that is there in the computer, I want to extract certain information only. Very frequently used the word sequence check. Any document which is sequentially pre-numbered, so I would say automated computer generated numbering of these documents. So suppose these are my sales orders which are sequentially pre-numbered. When I say perform a sequence check, I want you to find out if a sequence or there's been a sequence break, or if there's any order which is missing. So on the screen up there right now, there has been no sequence break. So after the sequence check is performed, the report would say there has been no sequence break. If it was like this, then the report would say, okay, as a result of my sequence check, I can conclude that there was a sequence break, order number 5 is missing. So why do we sequentially pre-number documents? Because we should be able to perform a sequence check to make sure all those documents have been completely recorded. So I haven't started the stage right now, guys. By the way, I just want to clarify, I haven't started teaching you what happens at this stage. Before I teach you what happens at this stage, there are certain terms or controls or control activities that you need to be okay with. Segregation of duties means divide the work. General controls means overall IT environment should be strong through passwords, etc. Application control means the data that is being put into the application, like sales purchase, should be accurate, it should be processed properly, and it should be reported properly. Authorization means approval should come from senior individuals. You can have physical controls, so you can physical controls to protect assets like cash, etc. You should make budgets, compare them to actual performance, conduct variance analysis, take action. This is called performance reviews. You should recalculate invoices data to check their arithmetical accuracy, arithmetical controls. You should be comparing different records to make sure there are no errors, accounting reconciliations. Standing data is the data in the computer which does not change very frequently. The file in which that data is stored is called the master file. Exception report is if you want to extract certain information from the data, you can give the computer a command and that data will come into your report. If a document is sequentially pre-numbered, that means I'm not numbering by hand, it is automated computer numbering. A sequence check would tell me if all those documents from 1 to 10 in sequence have been entered. If there's any sequence break, I can have an exception report on that as well. So I will open the chat box, but I will only answer questions relevant to these 2 slides. If you have any questions regarding the terminology used, please ask. I'm opening up the chat box. Any questions regarding the terminology used? It's the same. Serish, pre-numbered invoices or sequentially pre-numbered invoices, it's the same. The best word to use is sequentially pre-numbered invoice. Sarah, application. So, you have the sales application, you have the purchase application, you have the payroll application on the computer. Okay. Application control is how are you making sure that the data that you are putting into these applications, it is correct. So for example, you could have a format check. So one example of an application control is a format check. So I have put in a format for date, and if any data is not input into the system without using that format, there will be an error and you will not be allowed to process that information. Okay, so this is what IT application controls are, to make sure data is put into the system properly and it is processed properly. Mohammed Danish, exception reporting is a term for the computerized environment. Any information which is in the computer and you want to extract some portion of it, you can make an exception report. So I have the receivables aging. I don't want all the information. I just want data of in receivables greater than 90 days old. So I will give the computer a command and a report will be generated. Performance reviews is where you match budgets to your actual information. Yes, Neha, you can use these in your answers. You can give them as recommendations. You can give them as an impact on weaknesses. Absolutely, yes. Arbaz, standing data is data. The file in which the data is stored is called the master file. Sharia, yes. Exception reporting is asking for specific report from the system. Yes. No, performance review over here particularly talks about budgets and variance analysis. Mohsin, I've already explained the difference between standing data and master file. There's no difference. It's data and a file. Yes, yes, Zainab, it's selecting a specific area, not necessarily, no, not just linked to risk. The idea is any report, any data. So maybe I just want an exception report of all sales to Mr. A in the month of February. There is no risk. I just want that specific information. Neha, no, that is not, no, that's the wrong concept. Yes, Shayar, yes. Sequence checks can be performed by any level because I'm just making sure that all invoices have been entered. Guys, performance review is particularly for budgeting and variance analysis that you've done in your earlier studies. All right, guys, I'm minimizing the chat box now to start this portion officially. So again, these are all terms that you can be tested on knowledge-based questions as well as scenario-based questions. So this is what we actually do. So you know how at the planning stage, you have audit strategy and you have the audit plan. Similarly, at the internal control stage, there are 5 tasks that you have to do. Let me just see. I think I'm waiting for the slide to change so that you can see it. Guys, I'm just waiting for the slide to change. It's not. Have we lost connection maybe? Nope. Guys, just a second. I'm just trying to figure out why the slide hasn't changed. Can you guys do a quick confirmation to see if you can hear me? If someone could please type a quick. I can. Okay, that's fine. Okay. So I'm just waiting for the. Okay, that's fine. Thank you, guys. I'm just waiting for, because I think there's a screen seems to be stuck for a second. Just want to make sure. I think, Yasser, the problem is with my computer because it's not changing anywhere. All right, guys, and we're back now. Okay, we're back. Are you okay? Vanessa, you can hear me? All right, guys. Okay, so you know how at the audit planning stage, we had two things. We had the audit strategy and then we had the audit plan. Similarly, with regards to internal control over financial reporting, these are the 5 tasks that I have to perform. So you need to be very clear on the work that I have to do for knowledge-based questions as well as scenario-based questions. I need you to all please stop typing and listen to me very carefully. This is important. So if I quickly go back for a second, we finished the planning stage and we are starting work on internal control over financial reporting. We have already done this at the planning stage. So this is just a reminder that at the planning stage, we already understood the systems that they had in place. So the control environment, risk assessment, all of that has already been understood. We need to make sure that we document our understanding. There are 3 ways of documenting our understandings. You can do it through flowcharts. So make a chart, for example, to say the first stage is sales order, the next stage is GDN, etc., etc. You could also be doing it as a narrative. So description. So start typing it up. The first stage is a sales order is raised. This sales order is approved by the manager, etc., etc. So you could document your understanding through flowcharts or narratives. Or the third option is something called questionnaires. So instead of making a diagram or doing a description, instead what you have are questions. Is there a lock at the front desk? Are all assets coded? Is a credit worthiness check conducted for all new customers? So you make a list of questions and you just tick yes or no, for example, to see if the controls are in place. So as auditors, internal control means जिस तरीके से हम financial statements बना रहे हैं, the way financial statements are made. On that system, I've already understood what that system is. The next thing I have to do is document my understanding. So have I understood the system correctly or not? Once the system has been documented, this is the basic reason why I came to this stage. I need to test the system for 2 things. Number 1, is there a weakness in the design? Guys, very important. The client told me sales order is raised and then at the next stage an invoice is raised. The problem in the design is that a GDN is missing. So when I ask for problems or deficiencies in the design, you will tell me if you're happy with the way they're doing things. In my example, I'm not happy with the fact that they do not raise goods dispatch notes. Or you could also be looking for operating effectiveness of the systems. This is where you perform test of control. Let me write this down. Just give me a second. I'm not saying anything, guys. Okay, this is the simplest way I can put this. When I say look for deficiencies in design, I want you to know if the way I've made my system, is that okay or not? If I ask you to perform operating effectiveness controls or test of controls, basically, I want you to confirm that whatever stories I told you, are they actually being implemented or not? So the story I told you was all sales orders are pre-numbered. You will confirm it by performing a test of control. So you will take a sample of orders and check if they're pre-numbered. I told you a story that we conduct credit worthiness check for all new customers. That's my story. You will take a sample of new customers during the year and you will make sure a credit worthiness check was performed for all of them. So when I say, what testing are you doing? You should immediately say two things. I'm looking for whether there's a problem in the design or the way the system has been set up. I'm also looking for whether the stories I was told are actually being implemented or not. So test of control to see if the system is actually working as I was told. So I've understood the system, I've documented it, and now I've tested it. Once my testing is finished, all the problems that I found in A and B are reported in a report called management letter or letter of weaknesses. So I will tell the management that as a result of step number 3, testing the systems, these are the problems that I have found. So my first problem is you do not have a GDN. That's my first problem. My second problem is you told me sales orders are pre-numbered, but unfortunately that was a lie. I found 100 sales orders which were not pre-numbered. So whatever problems that you've found out, you have to report them in a letter called the management letter or letter of weaknesses, give it to them right now, and then decide, are you happy with the system or not? So the idea is that if you think the internal control system is okay, you did not find too many problems, then you can decrease the testing in the next stage. We haven't done the next stage yet. However, if you found too many problems, that means you cannot rely on the system, and therefore I will have to increase the testing in the next stage. So if I ever ask you, why are you looking at the internal control over financial reporting? You were not hired to work on systems. You were hired to work on the financial statements. Why are you checking orders in GDNs? Why are you wasting your time? You should immediately say, oh, because I need to go to step number 5. I need to decide whether I should pick up a bigger sample size or a smaller sample size. If the system is okay, if the system is good, I can rely on it. At the next stage, I'll pick up a smaller sample. If it's weak, too many problems, then I'll pick up a larger sample size. So this was primarily the reason why you were testing the controls to begin with. So if I go back over here, guys, I'm going to change the color of the pen. Just give me a second. I have understood the system already. I'm going to document it. I'm going to test it. I'm going to report deficiencies to the management. And then I'm going to decide how much testing is done at the next stage. So, on the very first day, which was, by the way, yesterday, I said that your examiner says students don't understand the process of audit. This process is right now in front of you. What factors I consider when I accept new assignments, how I plan the audit, and what sort of work I'm doing on internal control and why I'm doing it. We are in a few minutes, we'll start off with sales, purchase cycles, etc. But all of this will be expansion of what is up on your screen right now. So any questions regarding the work that we do on internal control over financial reporting? I'm opening up the chat box, guys. Oh, Sarah, no. Don't say stories is a word that I used. It's, you know how when I was understanding the system, I was told, oh, we have amazing systems. We have orders, we have GDNs. This is what I was calling a story. Should never use that word, by the way. So whatever understanding I've gained, I now need to confirm whether it is actually being followed. So you come to scans and I tell you, this is how we enroll our students. We have pre-numbered forms, we have this, we have that. These are my stories. You need to confirm whether I'm telling the truth or not. What data? Serish, we're not understanding the data. We're understanding the way. No. Serish, we're not doing it again. I'm just telling you that we've already done it. We've already gained the understanding at the planning stage. We are documenting it right now. Ankit, no, I can't. I can't because I haven't done the second part with you. So you just know right now, the only word I've done with you is test of control. And test of control, replace it by saying test of systems. Systems is the way we make financial statements. So test of control is testing to see if the systems are actually being implemented as I was told. Khazran, Fatma, you need to take the latest revision kit. You need to take the revision kit, which is applicable for March. I think June 17 should be fine as well. I think you're fine with June 17. Yes, you can use the June 17 one. Sarah, no, we're doing the ordering process right now. Sarah, the next thing we're doing is I'll be revising the stages with you right now. Shafiq, no, just the notes that I gave you guys yesterday. Yes, Danish, I'll be covering test of controls in a little while. Right, guys, let's move on now. So you should know that I have to test the controls to find out deficiencies in design or to perform test of controls. And these are the basic types of questions which can come up in your exam as well. Now, in your syllabus, you have certain cycles. The idea is that you will be given a small scenario and you have to find out deficiencies in the design, for example, or perform test of controls or a few other things as well. So let's start with a revision of the main cycles. Guys, please remember that there is no point in rote learning this information. So ratta maanne ki zarurat nahi hai. You just need to make sure that you understand what happens at each stage. First, let's take an overview, then we'll take each stage separately. With regards to sales, the first thing that you do is receive an order. So suppose customer A has placed an order for 50 boxes of purple paint. Once the order is received, it is then dispatched to the customer from the warehouse. So remember, most probably there will be a separate sales department which will be receiving the order, but the dispatch is done from the warehouse or stores. Once the good is dispatched, normally along with the goods, we also send them an invoice. So Mr. A placed an order for 50 boxes of purple paint. I have sent him 50 boxes of purple paint. Okay, so I've sent him those boxes as well. Now I need to, and this is normally done by the accounts or the invoicing department. In the above two information, there was no mention of the price. So now I'm going to raise an invoice. So my invoice would have the quantity as well as the price per box of paint. Now, up till now, nothing has entered in my accounting system. Guys, please remember, I received an order. I'm going to raise a sales order form. I sent the goods. I'm going to raise a goods dispatch note. I need to tell them how much money they have to give me. I raise an invoice. I'm just raising documents. Nothing has been entered in my accounting system right now. So this is the first stage where now this will become a part of my accounting system. So today, suppose I raised 2 invoices. For Mr. A, the invoice was for 500. For Mr. B, suppose the invoice was for 700. So both these invoices are entered in the daybook. From here, they will go to 2 places. My general ledger will have a double entry of the total amount. I'm keeping this very simple, guys. I'm going to debit my receivables ledger control account or receivables account 700. I'm going to credit my revenue 700. From the general ledger, you make your trial balance and you make your financial statements. Now, the point is, looking at my general ledger or nominal ledger, I don't know how much of the 700 is for Mr. A and how much for Mr. B. So what we have instead is something called a memorandum ledger, a receivables ledger. So Mr. A and Mr. B will have their own account, which would record the details of the transactions. So order raised, goods dispatched along with the invoice which is generated, all of this was documentation or my audit trail. The invoice was entered in the daybook. All the invoices were entered in the daybooks. Maybe there are no daybooks, which is perfectly fine. They could be going to the ledgers directly. The total goes to the general ledger and the breakup goes to a memorandum ledger. Remember, memorandum ledger is not a part of my double entry. From the general ledger, you make your trial balance and you make your financial statements. So this is an overview of how sales are recorded in the financial statements. On a monthly basis, these need to be reconciled. So at the end of the day, I should total this and I should match it with the total of the control account. So this needs to be done on a monthly basis because I need to make sure that my memorandum ledger is matching the control account, which becomes a part of my double entry as well. So whenever you have a question on sales, just remember these are the basic stages: order, goods dispatched, invoice raised, invoice entered, and then ultimately my receivables and sales are recorded. Let's go over this one by one now. So again, you do not need to learn it, but just understand what I'm trying to say. All sales orders that you raise should be sequentially pre-numbered. Whenever I use the word pre-numbered, you should automatically assume I'm saying sequentially pre-numbered. So order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, this order number should be sequentially done, generated by the computer. Before I accept the order, I should conduct an inventory check to make sure I have the goods in the inventory, because this will affect my lead or delivery time. If I have the goods in inventory, I can tell the customer you'll get them in 3 days. If I don't have them, you'll have to tell the customer you'll get it in 2 weeks maybe. So please make sure that the client is conducting inventory checks at the time the order is received. This sales orders should be sent to the warehouse, because remember, they have to send the goods. It should also be sent to the invoicing department. And obviously the sales department should keep one copy themselves as well. So they will retain by the sales department as well. If it's a new customer, do not give them goods on credit unless a credit worthiness check has been performed. You can have an agency for this, you can do this yourself, but one way or the other, no credit sales unless a credit worthiness check has been performed. If it's an existing customer, see if the credit limit has been reached or not. It should also be kept in mind that suppose I had allocated a credit limit of $1,000 6 years ago. Maybe that credit limit needs to be reviewed. So it is recommended that credit limits should be reviewed on a regular basis for existing customers to see if it needs to be increased or decreased. Very, very important. Because your orders are pre-numbered, you should perform a sequence check to follow up on unfulfilled orders. So today is Tuesday. I raised sales order numbers 22 to 35. In a day or so, I should perform a sequence check to make sure order number 27 to 35 all have been dispatched. So I can check whether all orders have been completely dispatched or not. So remember, this was happening at the sales department. Now we're back at the warehouse. At the warehouse, when you're about to dispatch the goods, you need to raise a sequentially pre-numbered good dispatch note. So a separate numbering, a separate sequence for this good dispatch note. Logically, you should match it to the sales order. So if the order was for 50 boxes, make sure you're also dispatching 50 boxes. Before dispatching, and this comes up quite frequently, the manager of the warehouse should sign this after performing quality and quantity checks. So is this actually 50 boxes of purple paint? Make sure you haven't added one extra or maybe one lesser. Quantity check. Make sure it's of the right quality. So before dispatch, the manager has to conduct quality and quantity checks. This goods dispatch note, you send one copy to the customer, one to the invoicing department, and one should be kept by the warehouse for their own records. The copy that you're sending to the customer, ask him to sign it. So sort of like carbon copies, so that you know that he has received that good as well. So all copies should be signed by the customer. Because it is sequentially pre-numbered, you need to make sure that all GDNs, so GDNs number 27 to 35, make sure all have been invoiced. So why was I pre-numbering orders? I wanted to make sure all have been dispatched. Why am I pre-numbering dispatch notes? I want to make sure all have been invoiced. We're now at the invoicing stage. As mentioned, invoices should be sequentially pre-numbered. They should be matched to the GDN. So if I've dispatched 50 boxes, I need to make sure that invoice is also for 50 boxes. One copy is sent to the customers. It should also be then obviously given to a separate, if you have a separate sales book clerk who's going to make sure that the double entry is being done. The prices on the invoice, any discounts that you are committing, they should be authorized. You should do a quick recalculation to confirm it is arithmetically accurate. As always, because they're pre-numbered, you should perform a sequence check to make sure all have been entered in the daybook. So invoice number 27 to 35, have all of those invoices been entered in the daybook or the ledgers or not? As discussed, on a monthly basis, your control account should be reconciled with the individual ledger. So at this stage, my double entry for receivables and sales has been made. This relates to afterwards. The customer will either send the money or he's going to send the goods back. When the money is received from the customer, match it to the invoice. Has he paid the entire $500 or part of it? If the customer has availed settlement discount, so payment within, for example, 30 days, check if that discount is still valid. You should try and encourage bank transfers. So instead of receiving payments through cash or check, I would ideally want that you pay through bank transfers, and on a monthly basis, your cash book should be reconciled to the bank statement. If the customer has sent the goods back, a credit note is going to be raised. Please remember, for sales returns, you have credit notes. Match it to the invoice. Have all the goods been sent back or maybe part of them, and find out what the reason for the return is. So on these two slides, you have basic controls for a manufacturing company. Please make sure that you do not rote learn this. So no point in doing a rut-up for this. You have to be clear on this really. Order, dispatch, invoice, entered in the day book, goes to the double entry system. We have a memorandum ledger, and ultimately the two need to be reconciled on a monthly basis. All of these should be kept in mind. What happens at the ordering stage, what happens at the dispatch stage, particularly the pre-numbering element. Guys, in every F8 question paper, in almost every exam, there will be the pre-numbering element. It's not enough to know, oh, this should be pre-numbered. You should know why. Why are sales orders pre-numbered? So I can do a sequence check to make sure all are dispatched. Why are GDNs pre-numbered? I can do a sequence check to make sure all are invoiced. Why are invoices pre-numbered? I can do a sequence check to make sure all invoices have been entered in the day books. So this is the understanding that you need to know for sequence checks as well. Any questions regarding the sales cycle, guys? Any questions regarding the sales cycle? I'm going to open up the question box. What is receivables ledger control account? That's basically your receivables account, right? So you debit your receivables, you credit your sales. So your account in the general ledger or the nominal ledger with the double entries taking place. Guys, okay, this is accounting. Memorandum ledger is basically, when I say memorandum ledger, that means it's not a part of my double entry. The idea is I'm maintaining it for record purposes only. So it won't have any double entry in it. It'll just be for record purposes. Serish, if the GDN signatures are not possible, listen, so sometimes, for example, nowadays the concept is online sales, right? So you're delivering through couriers. So you could get the signatures on the courier receipts. So one way or the other, you need to have acknowledgement that if you dispatched 50 boxes, the customer has received 50 boxes. Because the point is, you can't hear me? The point is that maybe I dispatched 50 boxes, he received 50, tomorrow he can call me and say, oh no, I only got 49. So what evidence do you have that they got 50, right? So one way or the other, get them to write it down that they've received 50 boxes. Credit notes are for sales returns. Guys, what accounting have you done in your life when you're asking me questions like these? Credit notes, when you have sales returns, so when your customers send your goods back, you raise a note called credit note. Shahab, someone senior should be doing it. Someone from the accounts department can do it. A senior official should review the reconciliation. Oh my God. BRS is bank reconciliation statement, guys. So on a monthly basis, your cash book should be reconciled to the bank statement that you get at the end of it. So my cash book is my record. Bank statement is sent by the bank. No more, Noman, no. It'll be different for computerized and manual. F8 will have mainly computerized systems, by the way. Yes, Zainab. So the memorandum ledger will have each customer's details. What sales have I made to that customer? What payments have I made? At the end of every month, how much money does that customer owe me? All right, guys. Keeping this in mind, let's do a sales question first, and then we'll cover the remaining two cycles and do questions for those as well. So from the handouts that have been updated, if you could please open to, I think this is December 14. If you could all please open the December 14 exam question. All right, I'm just going to open it over here as well, guys. So this is December 14. These handouts have been uploaded. Oh, it's not letting me open PDF. All right, guys, if you could please open December 14, you should be able to see the question. December 14, question number 5, I believe it is. Can you please type in to see that you've downloaded the paper, guys? Let me just open myself as well, and I'll give you time. Yes, this is the question with the name of Hummingbird. This is December 14, question number 5, part A. A question with the name of Hummingbird. You have 10 minutes. I need you to do this question right now, guys. Just a second, I'm going to write this down. December 14, question number 5, part A. We're going to start the discussion in 10 minutes. So December 14, question number 5A. I want you to find the deficiencies, and then I'll tell you how you need to word this. So I will resume. Well, I'll come back and ask you exactly 10 minutes from now. All right, guys. If we have a look at the requirement over here, and you need to be very careful about how you get the marks. As the external auditor of Hummingbird, you have to write a report to the management, in which you identify and explain 7 deficiencies. So I will put this up in a little while as well, but just to clarify, the marking scheme is exactly the same. Identification would be half a mark, and explanation of why it is a deficiency is another half a mark. And you have to give me, for 1 mark, a recommendation to address each of these deficiencies. So identify what the problem is, explain why it is a problem, and then give me a recommendation of what should be done. I'm going to be very specific, guys. Please do not give me random answers. Let's start off with the first paragraph. So listen to what I'm saying very carefully. The hotel revenue is made up of 4 key customers. They have 1 sales clerk, Brenda, who maintains all aspects of this revenue. She receives customer orders, she raises the invoices, and she processes the payments. Can you tell me if you have an issue in the design of this system? So please be specific to what I'm asking. Absolutely yes. Very well done. Sharia, please only answer what I'm saying. Noman, please stick to what I'm saying right now. Very well done, Vasanta, all of you. So very well done. Guys, please stop typing for a second. So how do I get marks? The first thing I do is identify that she is doing all the work, and therefore there is no segregation of duties. So that's like half a mark. And then I have to explain. If there's no segregation of duties, there could be a higher chance of fraud or error because no one is checking her work or the work has not been divided. So 1 mark by saying Brenda is doing all of this, there's no segregation, and therefore what can go wrong? Any fraud or error will go unchecked. Can you give me a recommendation, please? What's your recommendation? Which, don't just write duties should be segregated. I'm not going to give you marks. You need to be specific and tell me which duties need to be segregated. She's doing the ordering. Serish, that's a very general answer. You need to be very specific. She's doing the orders, the invoicing, and the payment processing. Yes, Zainab has a more appropriate answer as well. Ordering, invoicing, and payment processing should be done by 3 separate individuals. Guys, instead of saying hire more people, you could just divide the work amongst more existing people, right? Because please give recommendations which are practical. Okay, so a good answer would be that work should be divided so that the person who's raising the invoice or the orders should not be the person who's doing the payments as well. So that is how you've gotten 2 marks by identifying, explaining, and then giving a recommendation. Okay? All right, guys. Stop typing. Let's move on to the second one now. Be very careful. In raising the invoices, the sales system automatically inserts the prices for products. However, each hotel customer has contracted prices which are lower than the online prices, and hence Brenda manually edits the invoices before dispatch. So my point is, and this is where we are at right now. Can you tell me the weakness over here? Very well done, Serish. You've identified the fact that she's manually editing the invoice. That's half a mark. So what? You get the remaining mark by saying, so what? Absolutely. Shreya, you are not giving me the so what answer. No, that's not a good enough. GDN is not there, is not an answer. What are you talking about? Noman, we're still on the first paragraph. Absolutely. Kurutul Kokab has the right answer. Listen, guys, could you please stop typing? Stop typing. Stop typing, please. Those of you who are saying to everything, chances of fraud, chances of error, chances of fraud, chances of error, that's a 0, 0, 0, 0. Of course, everything wrong will result in error or fraud. You have to tell me what can go wrong. Danish, we're not on segregation of duties right now. Stop, please. You have to explain that because identification is she's manually editing the invoices. So what? If she makes an error, our customers would be dissatisfied. We could lose the customers. That's the explanation that you need to make. So you can't simply write, oh, she'll make an error. You'll have to tell me, so what? What error can she make? What impact will it have? So how do I get 1 mark? Identification from the scenario, half a mark. Explaining that if she makes errors, this could lead to a result in loss of customers. What's your recommendation? What's your recommendation, guys? Serish has a good answer. Someone, a senior official, should be double checking the invoices which have been manually edited. Another person has written, instead of manually editing it, for each customer, the contracted prices should be already in the system. I'm okay with both the recommendations. I am okay with both the recommendations. Guys, are you okay? Stop typing, please. Please stop typing, everyone. All right. Just give me a second. I need you to all stop typing, please. Okay. So let's just write this down. And we're now trying to pass F8, okay? Identify and explain. Oopsie. All right. And a recommendation. Let's do this for now. This is what the requirement is for this one. The first one, you said the first identification was there was no segregation of duties. And of course, you're not going to write like this. I'm just writing a summary version. Therefore, again, fraud or error could take place as there is no one checking her work. Your recommendation was that sales order, invoicing, and payment should be done by separate people. That was your first one. Your second one was Brenda manually edits the invoices, and you wrote, therefore, they could lead to errors, and therefore, your customers could be dissatisfied. I got 2 recommendations. I'm writing both. You'll only get 1 mark. So you can write both. The best will be marked. The first one was double checking. Okay. Yes, it's okay. Okay. The first one was double checking. You should be able to see my screen right now. And the second one was you said that you should preload the approved contracted prices. Okay, guys. So this is how I got, if I just mark this as a tutor, I got 1 mark for writing this, 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 and only I'll get 1. I won't get 2, only 1 of the 2. Okay. Suppose, guys, suppose this question also asked for test of controls. I know this one doesn't, but I want to do this with you so you know what the technique is. The idea is, right now, you are telling me what the problems in the design are, okay? These were the problems in the design. Now I want you to recommend a test of control for the recommendation that you have given. So you recommended that all 3 tasks should be done by separate people. So this was your recommendation. Going forward, how will I test this control? Listen to me carefully. I'm not asking you right now. I'm giving you the technique. My recommendation was these 3 tasks should be done by 3 separate people. I would take a sample of sales transactions. So I would take a sample of sales transactions and ensure that ordering, invoicing, and payment was done by 3 separate people. So whatever recommendation you give, later on, how will you confirm that it was actually implemented or not? So a test of control that you are recommending today, how would you confirm that tomorrow? Your next recommendation was you want someone to double check everything that was manually edited. I will take a sample of invoices in which the price was manually edited, and I will make sure that they have been reviewed by a senior official. So I can look for signatures or any evidence that they were double checked or reviewed by a senior official. You also recommended that instead of manually editing, they should be preloaded approved prices. Again, I'll take a sample of invoices. I will go to the computer and I'll check that their prices were preloaded instead of being changed later on. See, these are difficult TOCs because this question was not made for TOCs. What I'm trying to tell you is that when I say test of control for questions like these, whatever recommendation you have given, you have to confirm that recommendation later on. That's the idea. How do you confirm that tomorrow this is actually being done as well? So although this is not a TOC question, I am going to, maybe for 1 or 2 more weaknesses, I will ask you to give me more TOCs as well. So this was a technique. Let's go back to the question now. I want you to, now again I'm reading, guys, please don't give me random answers. Let's stick to what I'm saying. New trade customers are set up in the sales ledger master file. So remember master file? Upon passing suitable credit checks, and the credit limit is set at this stage by the finance director. So they're saying for new customers, a credit check is conducted and the credit limit is set at this stage by the director. Customers place orders online up to their preset credit limit. They receive an email confirmation and sales order interfaces into the dispatch system. The order number is linked to the customer account number. Goods are dispatched with reference, which are referenced to the order number but are not sequentially numbered. So from here to here. So please only talk about these. Any weaknesses that you have identified? Shahab, very well done. Nabil, completely wrong. 1123. Can you write completely wrong? Vasanta, what is not sequentially numbered? Sufyan, completely wrong. There is no indication that goods dispatched are not sequentially numbered. Oh, sorry. You're right. They have agreed. My mistake. It does come over here. Yes, you're absolutely right. Guys, you're absolutely right. Good dispatch notes are not sequentially numbered, which means what? What is the impact? If you're, by the way, guys, there are 2 problems over here. If there's anyone who's identified it, can you stop typing for a second, guys? In the top half, the order number is linked to the customer account number. This tells me that orders are not sequentially numbered. And then in the next line, they also mention that goods dispatch notes are not sequentially numbered. Can you tell me, so what? Let's start with the first one. If the orders are not sequentially numbered, what can go wrong? Someone has written, no, you can't write can lead to chaos. No, Shayar. No sequence check is possible. Very well done. So guys, stop typing. My next, no loss of revenue, omission is the right answer. So my next weakness is if the sales orders are not sequentially numbered, this is identification. I will not be able to follow up on unfulfilled customer orders, and therefore my customers or revenue could be lost. What's the recommendation for sales order, guys? What's the recommendation? That all sales orders should be sequentially pre-numbered and a sequence check should be carried out. So you've already given me 3. Now the fourth one that you gave me was GDNs are not numbered. Guys who are randomly typing in the answers, I'm just going to minimize the box for a second. You have told me this now. 1, 2, 3, and this was the fourth one. Again, very simple, exactly as we did before. Your GDNs are not sequentially numbered. Therefore, we will not be able to check if all dispatch notes have been invoiced. Your dispatch notes, if they're not invoiced, please remember your revenue is going to be missing from there. And the recommendation would be, again, ensure all goods dispatch notes are sequentially pre-numbered. One more thing, guys. I had one person, there are no slides. I'm not showing the slides right now. There is one person who's identified another weakness from here. I know this is a person who's done this question again. This was a difficult weakness. Remember, we said that once you set the credit limits, they should be reviewed. The weakness is that the director is not reviewing the credit limits, which could mean that you could either be giving them too much and they're not paying, or maybe your credit limit is not high enough. So we did this just now, that any credit limits which are allocated should be reviewed to see if they're still valid. This was a difficult one, but again, this is something that you should have kept in mind as well. All right, guys. Any weakness from the next paragraph? Trade customers, sales invoices. There are 2 very strong weaknesses over here. Come on, guys. Oh, sorry, from the above thing as well. Come on, any weaknesses? They've moved to a cheaper local courier. Oh, yes, we missed that. Yes. Again, an easy one, guys. They've moved to a cheaper local courier and some orders have not been delivered. Guys, come on. Let's be very careful. Let's be very careful about this. We are now on the weakness where it says that because they've moved to a weaker courier, your orders have been delivered. What's the impact of this? If your orders are late, what's the problem? This is number 6. Your customers would be dissatisfied, which could lead to a loss in revenue as well. Very well done. All right, now I have been getting random answers from the next one. Guys, could you be very specific to this paragraph? I want, okay, very well done. Sikandar has one answer, the last one. Your master file is being accessed by the senior sales ledger clerk, which is not okay, because that means that he could be making incorrect, unauthorized changes to this. And what's a recommendation? Who should have access to the master file? Absolutely, Tehreen. Access should be restricted to senior officials only. There is one more weakness over here. There is one more weakness in this part. This is very important, guys. Read the first line again and again. Yes, Abdul Rahman has the perfect answer. Guys, please pay attention. Come on, guys, please pay attention. When it says that, where are we right now? Yes, trade customers' invoices are generated when the order is placed. This is a huge issue. How can you generate an invoice when an order is placed? It should be generated when the goods are dispatched. So instead of linking it to the ordering part of the system, it should be linked to the dispatch part of the system. So the idea is, and I hope some of you pick this up, because remember, you order, you dispatch, and then you invoice. So the impact could be that you might end up sending invoices for orders which were not dispatched, which ultimately means that your customer would be upset and your relationship could be affected. Sarah, I've seen your question and I'll answer it towards the end. All right, guys, any weakness in the last heading? Weakness in the last heading. Any weakness in the last heading? Reconciliations are not made on a monthly basis. Very well done. So what? Guys, so what? If reconciliations are not done on a monthly basis, so what's the issue? You have to tell me. Errors may not be identified. Absolutely, yes. No, you can't write receivables overstated, guys. Problems are not identified on a timely basis. That's the answer. You might not be able to, it'll take a lot of time. Guys, why are you writing profit will reduce, etc., etc.? Don't write random things. If I'm not reconciling two accounts, so with my control account, for example, then that means that there could be errors which will not be identified on a timely basis. Not per day. It should be happening on a monthly basis, not just for 1 month. It should be done at the end of every month. That's the idea, right? Another person has identified the fact that customer statements are not sent on a regular basis. Please remember, a customer statement will tell me or will tell the customer how much money they have to give us. So if you're not sending the customer statements on a regular basis to all customers, then that means you might not be receiving all the money that you have, or any errors will not be identified. No, Sharyar, I'm not okay with your answers at all. You cannot write random things like your revenue will be overstated or you won't find until the end. No, you'll have to be very specific to what the issue is. So there was number 9 was over here and no reconciliation was number 10. Once again, guys, please remember that when you're identifying the weaknesses, you have to explain why they're a weakness so that you can go on to give an appropriate recommendation. And if asked, you can give a test of control as well. Sarah, you asked me a question on this over here. Our point was not that credit limit can be exceeded. Our point was, once you've allocated a credit limit of $2,000, you should review whether that $2,000 is still enough. Maybe the customer wants to buy from you some more, but they can't because you haven't increased the credit limit. So when I say review, I'm not just talking about to see whether it's been breached or not. I'm talking about whether that limit is still appropriate or not. Does that make sense? Yes, they should be sending monthly customers statements to all customers. All right, guys? Any other questions at all? So again, identification, explanation, recommendation, all has to be there, which is very, very important. Okay, I'm now minimizing the chat box. I'm now going to move on to the purchase cycle. And just to give you an overview of what happens at the purchase cycle, along with a very important discussion on internal controls over input of purchase invoices. All of that is very, very important from the FH point of view. So let's go over here now. Have the slides changed? All right. Just give me a second, guys. All right. So this is what the purchase cycle would look like. It's very similar. So the controls would be very similar to what we've done on sales, but obviously it's going to be different because instead of selling goods, we're now buying material. So within the store, so this happens, a quick overview first, okay? In the store, the warehouse manager has identified that the reorder level has been reached. So we've set a reorder level and that order has been reached, and therefore he's going to raise a requisition of 100 kilograms of raw material. That requisition will go to the purchase department. The purchase department should ideally have a set of or an approved supplier list, and they're going to place the order by raising a purchase order. Once the goods are being delivered, so requisition was raised by the store, order was placed by the purchase department, now the supplier has sent the goods. So the supplier's truck is standing outside. When I accept the goods, I am going to raise a goods received note. Along with the goods received note, I have also received the invoice. So when I was receiving the goods, I saw that they've also sent me the purchase invoice. Please remember that in all the cycles, the purchase invoice is one document that I cannot pre-number because I'm not making it, I'm receiving it. All the invoices received today from Mr. E and F and G, for example, 100, 200 and 500, I will do the double entry in the general ledger. So I'm going to debit my purchases by 800 and credit my liability by 800. From the general ledger, it goes to the trial balance and financial statements. However, we will also be maintaining each supplier's individual account in the memorandum ledger. So this is not a part of my double entry. This is for record purposes only. the first thing that needs to happen is similar as to what we did before. On a monthly basis, your control account should be reconciled with your memorandum ledger. There is one more thing over here. At the end of every month, the supplier will be sending supplier statements. So Mr. E sent me a statement to say, you have to give us 100. Mr. F sent us a statement to say, you owe us $250. When I reconcile the supplier statement to the individual account, this has matched, this has not. So in the purchase ledger, you actually have two types of reconciliation. The first one is supplier statement to the individual ledger, the first reconciliation, and then your individual ledger to your control account. Mr. E said, I owe him 100, match it to your own records. And the total of this and then ultimately match to the control account. So the purchase cycle has requisition. When you're writing down the answers, please be very careful about your terminology. In sales, you receive an order. In purchases, you place an order. In sales, you dispatch the goods. In purchases, you receive the goods. Sometimes because you're in a hurry, you will mess up the words and you're going to struggle in getting through the exam as well. Let's go over the main points. They're very similar to what we've done. In the store, requisitions should be sequentially pre-numbered. You should only raise a requisition after the reorder level has been checked, and the requisition should be approved by the manager in the stores. At the ordering stage, all orders should be pre-numbered and matched to the requisition. Use an authorized supply list. Guys, this is important. This list should be annually updated to make sure you still have the right quality and prices from these suppliers. One copy is sent to the supplier, one copy is sent to the warehouse, and one copy should be retained by the ordering department. Because they're pre-numbered, you should carry out a sequence check to make sure all orders have been received or not. In the warehouse, goods are received. When goods are received, you raise a goods received note and match it to the order. So I received 100 kg of material. I want to make sure that's what I ordered. The warehouse manager Yep. There's a problem with the internet. It's connected. No. You'd have to call them. It's done. Sorry. I think we got disconnected for a second, guys. Can you hear me okay now? Yes, and the screen. Let me just quickly have a quick look. Apologies, guys. I think we got disconnected for a second. I think the audio has resumed. Can you do a quick voice check, guys? A quick voice check, please. A quick confirmation that you can hear me. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. All right, guys. We're back now. Okay. So, let's start from the goods received stage again. So when you've received the goods at the warehouse, make sure your goods received note is pre-numbered. Make sure it's matched to the purchase order. The GRN should be signed by the warehouse manager after quality and quantity check. So is it the right quality? Have I received the right quantity as well? This is very similar to what we did before we were sending the goods to our customers. Okay. Again, with regards to the goods received note, one copy should be sent to the ordering department to tell them that we've received the good, one to accounts because they'll be receiving the invoice, and one should be kept by the warehouse. Because it's pre-numbered, a sequence check should be carried out to ensure all invoices, all goods that were received, they've been invoiced as well, and we've received the invoices as well. Whenever there is a question on the purchase cycle, there will always be lots of weaknesses from the invoicing stage. My biggest issue is highlighted over here. Because I'm receiving them from outside, I cannot sequentially pre-number purchase invoices. This means I will probably have to number them by hand. So I can do a manual numbering. I cannot do a sequential pre-numbering. Okay, this is very, very important. Once the supplier has sent an invoice, so I received an invoice which said, oh, for 100 kg, you have to give us $5,000, for example. Okay, I will match them to the GRN. Is it the same quantity as the GRN? Perform arithmetic checks. Because I'm receiving this from the supplier, check the arithmetical accuracy of these invoices. They now need to be entered in the ledger with application controls. Guys, please remember, in my hand, I'm holding 10 invoices from different suppliers. One is for 5,000, another is for 1,000, whatever the amounts are. These paper invoices I need to enter into my purchase system. I have to make sure that I don't miss any of them. I have to make sure that I enter the right amounts. Therefore, it is important that when you are putting in the invoices into the system, you apply application controls. Some examples are given as follows. I have 10 invoices in my hand. Did I enter all 10 of them? One application control. I can add the invoices on my calculator, 5,000 plus 1,000 plus 1,000 plus 3,000, and check that the total entered in the system is the same. So after entering all the invoices, my calculator says 50,000. What does the system say? You can check each invoice one by one. I've entered 5,000, a quick recheck to make sure it is 5,000. So at this stage, when you're putting the invoices into the system, you need to have application controls to make sure you don't miss any of them or you do not make errors. There should be segregation of duties. The person who's placing the order, who's receiving the good, and who's making the double entry. They should be all separate people. On a monthly basis, there should be 2 reconciliations. Individual supplier statement to individual account, and then individual account to your control account as well. You will either make the payment or you will send the goods back. For making the payment, this one is tested quite a lot. In exams, this comes up quite a lot. When you are approving an invoice, suppose all invoices are approved by the finance director, for example. The finance director should not just randomly approve an invoice. He should check the audit trail. He should ask for the invoice. He should ask for the GRN. He should ask for the purchase order. So unless the audit trail is there, invoices should not be approved for payment. Again, there should be segregation of duties. This time, try to avail settlement discounts wherever possible. I would like to pay through bank transfer. However, if I'm paying through checks, then for higher amounts, you should have 2 signatories. On a monthly basis, as discussed above, you should be performing 2 reconciliations, and because it's payment, you should also be performing the bank reconciliation. If you are sending the goods back to the supplier, then you make a debit note. So please remember, for purchase returns, you have a debit note. For sales returns, you have a credit note. So it's very similar to what we've done already, but there's slightly different wordings because one of the stage at least has a document which is not pre-numbered. Any questions regarding the invoicing stage, guys? Any questions regarding the purchase cycle in particular, but also overall the invoicing stage, which is very, very important? Muzammil, you'll have to write the question for me to check it. Please write the question. I'll then check it and give you the answer. Is it okay? No. Muzammil, only write it if you've used the abbreviation before. If you've used it somewhere before, then you can use it. Otherwise, you can't. So first explain goods received note is GRN and then use it. With application control over input, payment made first point. No, application control over input is for invoices. It's for invoices, Danish. So Danish, application controls is when you're entering the invoices, you need to somehow make sure that you haven't made errors. So that's the idea behind it. Recalculate, Neha. This is recalculate. Arithmetical checks over here, it means we recalculate. So pick up an invoice, quickly check the calculation. All right, guys. If we now move on to your capital expenditure cycle, just a quick overview. It is very similar to your purchase cycle, but slightly just one minor difference. So this time I'm talking about the purchase of, like a tangible non-current asset. So for example, if my customer services department needs a new computer, they will have to raise a requisition. Again, after the requisition, an order will be placed. All controls are the same. When you receive the computer, an asset received note will be raised. And along with this, the vendor has sent you the invoice as well. So there is no difference over here. It's exactly the same as your purchase cycle. Instead of a daybook, what we have instead is called a non-current asset register. So just remember when you're revising that invoices and all other details are entered in the non-current asset register, but this is not my double entry. Your double entry is made in the general ledger, from which it goes to the trial balance and the financial statements. So the only new thing is the concept of a non-current asset register. From your earlier studies, please remember, this has all the details of my asset. The code, the location, the cost, the accumulated depreciation, my depreciation policy, depreciation method, all of this will go in my non-current asset register. So as a part of your cycle or your controls, you need to have a non-current asset register. That's the main thing you have to keep in mind. The next cycle that you have to do is payroll, and this is different from the rest, so you need to pay a bit more attention over here. Before I start the details of this, let's just discuss a few important terms in the payroll cycle, guys. The first one is a term used in F8, which is called a clock card. Now, a clock card is basically used to record time worked. So each individual is going to have his own clock card. So for example, I have my card. In the morning, there will be a clocking machine. At 9 o'clock, when I touch my card, I will be marked as present. At 5 o'clock, when I touch my card again, I will be marked as going out. So 8 hours, the calculations will be done by the computer and I'm going to be paid accordingly. So please remember, for F8 questions and overall, a clock card needs to have a machine which reads the card. So it is used for people who work on an hourly basis as well as those who are salaried, so you can record your time in and time out. So this is individual, right? So this is individual to each employee. Payroll sheet is made on a monthly or a weekly basis, right? So this would have details of all employees, Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C. Their gross pay, any deductions made, along with their net pay. So all of this goes over here. Mr. A, gross pay is 100, deductions are 20, his net pay is 80. So whenever I use the word payroll sheet, you should automatically think a piece of paper which has details of different employees. Payslip again is individual. Mr. A will have his own payslip with the breakup. This is why you're getting $80 this year. A bank transfer list is only made if you're paying through bank transfer. So bank transfer list is basically a list of instructions that I'm giving the bank. So I will tell the bank, Mr. A, account number this, please transfer 80. Mr. B, account number this, please transfer 70. Mr. B, C, account number this, please transfer 120. So basically, I'll be picking up the net amounts. I don't need to tell the bank the breakup. I'm just telling the bank that from Scan's account, payments need to be transferred to each individual's account. So in F8 questions on payroll, if you see the word clock card, you should know it's a card that I have to record my time in and time out. Payroll sheet is for all employees. Payslips, each employee has it individually, and bank transfer list are the instructions that I send to the bank. So 4 terms used very frequently. It's very interesting. For appointments and leavers, I have a few common controls that you need to be very, very okay with. Number 1, read this very carefully. All staff appointments should only be made by the HR department, which is separate from the payroll department. So human resource department should be doing the work, the appointments, the final interviews, etc., instead of the payroll department, which does the calculation of my salaries and wages. When you have a starter or a leaver, a new person who's joined or an existing person who is left, your master file should be updated immediately. So master file has all the standing data. If it's a new person who's joined from today, make sure you enter today. If it's a person who's left, make sure you remove him from the payroll records. Any increments, so any increments should be proposed by the HR department, but approved by the board of directors. So salary increments or wage rate increments should be approved by the senior most level. For all the standing data in the master file, access should be restricted to authorized individuals only. Very important, the computer will have record of access attempts. So a clerk is not allowed to access payroll information, but he's trying to guess the password. All these attempts will be maintained or should be maintained as a log, and this log should be reviewed on a routine basis. Who is trying to access the payroll application and why? You should review this. Very important, the standing data should be matched to the personnel files. The personnel files is a name for the HR files. So you know the hard copy that we have? So on a periodic basis, data in the computer should be matched to the HR files that are being maintained by the HR department. When you are calculating salaries or wages, a few things that need to be kept in mind, mainly for wages. All clock cards should be sequentially pre-numbered. The clock card machine should be supervised or in open view. The idea is that I don't want fake attendance. My friend was not coming today. He gave me his card. Please mark me in and out. So it should either be supervised or it should be in an open view. The area supervisor should do a head count. So at 9 o'clock, everyone marked their attendance at 9:15. So at 9:15, the area supervisor should say, okay, attendance records show 25 people. Are there 25 people in the factory area? So a head count should be done. Any overtime worked should be reviewed and then authorized, and authorization should be done by signature. Guys, I have something important to add regarding overtime. Overtime should normally be approved before it is worked. So if I spend 2 extra hours today, will that count as overtime? Get the approval before working. And definitely before payment. So overtime was worked, overtime payment was made. After the payment was made, it was approved by the manager. That's not of any benefit. So if you're planning on spending extra time for which you expect to get paid, make sure that you ask your manager before working it. If that hasn't been done, then at least before payment, the manager should sign it for authorization. Aisa nana, okay, from 9 to 5, I chat with my friends, and then after 5, I start working overtime so that, I can get paid for it. So be very careful about overtime. Again, your clock cards should be matched to the HR files on a periodic basis. I want to make sure this person actually exists. I'm back to data input, guys. When I'm recording the time worked, make sure you have proper general and application IT controls. So range checks. So I will only process timing, the clock card hours if they are between 1 hour to 9 hours. So if someone tries to enter record less than 1 hour or more than 9 hours, that amount those hours will not be processed. You should have proper passwords, which is a general control. For all deductions, this comes up very frequently. They should be automatically calculated by the system. Even then, they should be rechecked on a sample basis. So although the system is automatically calculating the deductions, they should still be rechecked on a sample basis to make sure that the computer has calculated the system, the amounts properly. When you're making the payments, again, all pay slips to be pre-numbered, and there should be segregation of duties. The person who's making the payroll sheet, the person who's doing the double entry, and the person who's making the payment. They should be separate people. For salaries, guys, remember, salaries are fixed, so they do not depend on the number of hours worked. That's wages. If they're on a variable basis, those will be wages. I want you to take a second and read these three very carefully. These come up in F8 quite a lot. Read them once and then I'll cover them with you one by one. All three of these are tested very frequently. So please read these carefully, then I'll discuss them one by one. All right, guys, let's start with the first one. So suppose I'm the finance director. I have to authorize payment. So in front of me, I have the payroll sheet and it says pay Mr. A this much, pay Mr. B this much, pay Mr. C this much. The idea is don't just blindly authorize the payments. On a sample basis, you need to, don't do it for all employees, but ask for records. Why are we paying Mr. A 80 pounds? I want evidence that he worked for this many hours. It's the same as the audit trail for the purchase cycle. So you need to make sure that as the person approving the payment, you need to make sure that those employees actually exist and the payments that you are making are for actually the hours that were worked. So the idea is whoever is authorizing the payment should perform checks, match the records to payment list and the other way around to make sure all the data is accurate. The bank transfer list should be matched to the payroll list. We just did this right now. So the bank transfer list should match the payroll sheet as well, because they should be exactly the same amounts. And the bank transfer list should be authorized from someone other than the person who authorized payroll. So the payroll department can make the payroll sheet, but the payment should be done by the director, for example. So let's be very clear. We have an HR department. We have a payroll department working on salaries and wages only. And then we have the director who is separate from both of these, who okays the payment. So that's the idea that you need to be very, very okay with. One last thing before I open the chat box for questions. Sometimes you might be giving wages in cash, so you don't really have an option. In that case, you have something called pay packets, so envelopes which have the money. Again, only hand over the pay packet once you have seen the card, and any uncollected wage packets, so Mr. A is absent today, should be kept in a safe place or deposited in a bank. So these are the main areas that you need to keep in mind when you are covering the payroll cycle for any F8 question. I'm opening up the chat box. I still have one more slightly difficult question to do and a few more techniques to discuss. So if you have any questions regarding payroll and capital expenditure, please let me know. All right, should I go back all the way back up? No, from 11:30:52. Muzammil, you'll have to read your knowledge summary to get detail of general and application controls. This is a very technical topic. General controls are all on type of computers that you have. So overall IT environment. Application controls are related to specific applications and data that go into it. Sales is an application, purchase is an application, payroll is an application. So application controls will make sure that the data that is going into these applications is appropriate. Why GRN is issued? Tayyib, GRN is not issued. When you receive assets or goods, you make a note for yourself to say, okay, I have received these goods. It's not sent to anyone, it's your own document. You should, Muzammil, in real life and in F8, not having a non-current asset register is a weakness. So you need to have a non-current asset register. Otherwise, that's a weakness. How are you maintaining a record of all your assets? Tehreem, you need to explain it. If it's in one line, for example, the goods dispatch notes are pre-numbered, not pre-numbered. Therefore, a sequence check cannot be performed to ensure all GDNs have been invoiced. That is a complete answer. It's not a paragraph, it's a complete answer. Yes. Sarah, range check is, I'll give you a very interesting example. So for example, I am a company which sells rackets online. So, you know, the tennis rackets. I know for a fact that no one would buy more than 3 rackets at a time. So in my sales application at the back end, I have put in a range check 1, 2, 3. Any customer who tries to place an order for 4 rackets, he will get an error because at the back end, there's a range check. So in ACCA, for example, if you can only take 4 papers in one attempt, there's a range check. If you try to enroll for 5 papers, you will get an error. So there are different types of application controls. Range check is one example. Format check is another example. So you know how you sometimes see that dates can only be entered like this. Day, month, year. This is called a format check. Bona fide means real employees. Bona fide means they should be actual employees, not fake. Yes, paying in cash, the pay packet should be properly sealed. Okay. If any pay correction paper online, then what? Muzammil, if they're paying online, then there will be no uncollected wage packets. Wage packet means you're paying in cash. If you're paying through a bank transfer, then there is no cash. The non-current asset, Zainab Yaqub, the non-current asset register, is reconciled with the general ledger. Okay, Saqib, I already answered what bona fide employee is. That's actual employee. Okay. All right, guys. I need you to wake up for the next 5 or 10 minutes because after this, I'll do a question which is slightly difficult. So you need to listen to me and look at the slides that are now coming. Let's start. This is very, very important. Your examiner has said, please look at this very carefully. This can come up in the F8 exam. Number 1, you could be asked to identify a deficiency, half a mark. Explain a deficiency, half a mark. Give a recommendation, 1 mark. So this is what we've done. Identify plus explain. You will do this in one column and then give a recommendation. You do this in another column. Sometimes, so she says, often a test of control would also be asked. So for example, you told me, and now listen to this very carefully, I'm picking up a few examples which are very important. You told me, for example, one of the questions that we did just now, the clerk can access the master file. This is identification. Therefore, he might be able to make unauthorized changes, and this could lead to extra errors or whatever it is. Recommendation is that only senior officials should be able to access the master file. This is my recommendation. Now you have to test the control. You said only senior people should be able to access the master file. So what I'll do is I will go to a clerk. I'll ask him to enter his password to try and access the master file. If he cannot access it, then that means my recommendation has been implemented. Again, you just told me in a previous answer that sales orders were not pre-numbered and therefore we do not know if there's any unfulfilled sales order. Your recommendation was all sales orders should be sequentially pre-numbered and a sequential check should be performed. Test of control is take a sample of sales orders and ensure they've been sequentially pre-numbered. So for test of controls, you could either be observing something which is happening live. For example, when we ask them to try and use their password to access information. You could be taking a sample of some documents and you could be inspecting them. So you can take a sample of some documents. So, okay. I think my screen has gone again. Oh no, it's coming up now. It's okay. So you could be taking a sample of some documents. So it could be a sample of invoices, a sample of orders, a sample of something. Or it could be fake transactions. So when I say fake transactions, this is important. Listen to this very carefully. In my question, it says, when a customer places an order on the website, an inventory check is automatically performed. This is what they've told me. The test of control is I will place a fake order to ensure that an inventory check is automatically taking place. A better answer, I will place an order of an inventory which I know is not in stock, and I will check that an automatic inventory check has taken place and they let me know the inventory is out of stock. Another example for test data of fake transactions, the question that we did just now. So they said when the customer places an order, an invoice is automatically emailed to the customer. So something is happening automatically. How will I confirm this? I will place a fake order and I will confirm that the email is automatically sent. So most of your test of controls will come from these three wordings. For things like passwords that you have to observe live, you will say, fine, I'll go and check whether this is happening or not. Majority of the time, you'll be taking a sample of something and checking whether it has been done, or if it's an automated computerized part of the system, if it's an automated part of the system, then you could use fake data to sort of check that the computer is working properly. So if you're asked to recommend a test of control, it is normally 1 mark per test of control. Your examiner has also, instead of deficiencies, she's also started testing strengths. So she's not asking for the bad part, she's asking for the good part. And then you have to explain why is it a strength. So if they are pre-numbering their sales invoices, how is this good? If they have application controls over purchase invoices, how is this good? So another thing that you can be tested on, that's the 5th thing, which is the strength. And one last thing, the examiner has written that you might be asked to present your answer in the form of a report, in which case a covering letter is required. You can look at any of the past exams and you would know what the format of that covering letter is. That would be another 2 marks. So for scenario-based questions, this is what can come up in the exam. I have a question that I want to do. Okay, before I do the strengths question, a few things. The examiner has said that students are failing because they are not explaining the deficiency, because their recommendations are not addressing the specific weakness. So don't rote learn recommendations and copy paste them. Or sometimes their TOCs are not well defined. So these, or they just keep saying observe, observe. So see, I've written this. Be very careful when you are using the word observe. It cannot be used in a lot of places. Right, guys. Any questions before I do a question on strengths? So I have to do one more question with you. Why would the examiner tell you the deficiency, Numan? You'll have to find the deficiency. Yes. If it's, guys, if it's, do this one if it's a 3-column thing. Identification, explanation in one column, recommendation in another column, and TOC in another column. This is the best way to present this. Yes, Tehneem. You cannot cram anything. You just have to keep them in mind. Absolutely right. Guys, are you ready to do a question on strengths? So this time around, I'm only looking for the good parts. Khazran, Fatma, you're going to insert a table. I will show it to you either today or tomorrow. If I can access the platform today, I can do it right today. Otherwise, I'll do it tomorrow. While you're reading the question, I'll try and access the platform and show you how to do it right now. So guys, are we ready to do a question now? Do you have the day plan? Do you have the day plan? Okay. All right, guys, let's do a question on payroll. Let me quickly find it. Just give me 1 second. All right, this is, guys, December 15, 5A. So December 15, 5A. You have to do 5A for December 15, guys. Why is my screen not showing? If you could all please make sure you take this out. We're doing part A for December 15. Can you hear me okay? Guys, can you just quickly confirm that you have December 15, 5A in front of you? So I can give you the time to find the strengths. No, you do not need, Noor Ahmed, you do not need in an introductory paragraph. I think I've been disconnected. Have I been disconnected? Okay. Guys, can you quickly confirm, some of you, that you can hear me and you have this question in front of you? This is December 15, question number 5A. It's not moving either. There's no reply, है ना? I'm stuck. They can't even hear me. So because normally hota hai कि they at least hear me. All right, guys, I'm so sorry. We again had a connection issue. I am going to discuss part A for December 15. If you could please, guys, take 5 minutes and identify 5 strengths for me. So this time around, I'm not looking for problems or deficiencies. I'm looking for strengths only. So tell me what they're doing correctly and what they're doing well. I'm going to start the discussion in exactly 5 minutes. So in 5 minutes, you will tell me that these are the things that they're doing correctly, okay? Guys, can you quick confirmation you're awake and alive? Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, so 5 minutes and we start this trend. So tell me the good part about this now. मुझे बताओ अभी मेरी स्क्रीन में पॉज कर रही हूँ and see if I can access 5 minutes का बोल दूँगी वहाँ पास 35 पे हो जाएंगे ठीक है tell me the कोई है आपके पास login details हैं for the जो आपने अभी बनाया है आपने बनाया अकाउंट मुझे बताओ what's the address ACCA क्या campus insight
ACCA
campus insight .net or username and password. अच्छा अब जो बताओ how do I oh god okay all right guys so like I said you could have questions on deficiencies you could have questions with deficiencies recommendations test of controls and questions on strengths as well I want you, so we've opened a question from December 15th. It's a question on strengths. I'm going to specify the paragraph for you guys. So the paragraph that I've just highlighted, this is the third paragraph that you can see on the screen. Factory staff are each issued a sequentially numbered clock card. In this paragraph, there are 3 strengths. Audio connection lost. Okay, so there are 3 strengths, guys. I'm opening up the chat box. Can you tell me? Okay, we were saying they could hear me. All right, guys, come on, start telling me. What strengths can you find in the paragraph, which is the third one? Factory staff are each issued a sequentially numbered clock card. Who started? All right, we're okay now. Right, guys, apologies. As always, this happens, I think, once in a session that you just completely get lost at the end. All right, guys, I see most of you have been typing in the right answers. Let me just quickly read through this. Yep, this seems to be most of you have the right answer, guys. I'm going to be very specific now. I need you to stop typing for a second. Can you please stop typing for a second? From this paragraph, which is marked up on the screen right now, most of you have identified the first strength. So you get half a mark for writing that all clock cards that they're issued are sequentially pre-numbered. Very well done. Half a mark for saying this is okay, and then explain why. If clock cards are sequentially pre-numbered, you can ensure that there's complete recording of all the hours that have been made, and payment can be made correctly as well. So if a document is pre-numbered, you can then check that all related calculations are completely recorded. So complete recording and payment for hours work can be done. That's the basic reason why this is a strength. So very well done. Someone had written, and I saw that, this part. Can you explain how this is a strength? You've written that automatically calculates gross and net pay. So this is good that the computer is automatically calculating it, but why is it good? If the computer is automatically calculating it, why is it a strength? There are lesser chances of... No, don't say no error. Guys, no, don't say no error. Just say lesser chances of errors. Very well done. And I don't know, I think there was one person who did identify. Can someone tell me if they found the last line as a strength? The supervisor is rechecking each payment on a sample basis. Again, very well done. So you, by the way, you guys are the opposite. You have difficulty in finding deficiencies, no difficulty in finding strengths. So very well done. Because rechecking is being done, you're confirming the automated testing of the system. So yes, Aserish has the right answer. You ensure ensuring that the system is running effectively. Very carefully, guys, no overconfidence, okay? No overconfidence. Can you tell me the strength in the next paragraph? Yes, that has been correctly identified. They have a separate HR department which is responsible for setting up permanent employees and leavers. So let's not talk about the problem right now. My issue is they do have a separate department, which means there are lesser chances of fraud as this is separate from the payroll department. Very well done. Separate HR, which is separate from the payroll department. Good. So I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4 strengths. Any strength in the rest of the question, guys? Any strength in the remaining 2 paragraphs? There are, by the way, at least 2 more. No, guys. Supervisor reviewing overtime is a huge weakness. Discretionary bonus is a huge weakness. They're both weaknesses. Supervisor is reviewing the overtime after it has been paid. Uska main kya karu? After payment is not a strength, guys. Yes, very well done. Come on, you should pick up the easy ones. Bank transfer. You know how I keep saying they should preferably pay through bank transfer? And Hassan, very well done. The bonuses are communicated in writing. So there are only 2 more strengths. There are no other strengths over here, guys. The fact that communication is done in writing and the fact that it is paid by bank transfer. Both of these are strengths for the question. The rest of the answers that you're giving, guys, they're weaknesses. When you go home today, or you are at home, when you practice, maybe you should do part B, which is deficiencies. Then this will give you a better idea of how you need to look for weaknesses as well. Guys, I need you to stop typing for a little while. Muzammil, bonus is discretionary, which means you decide how much you want to give. So that's not fair. You can't just decide, I like this person, I'll give him more. I don't like this person, I don't give him enough. So giving a bonus is not a problem, but the fact that it's up to the discretion of an individual, that's the problem. Bonus should also be given as a proper policy. All right, guys. Tehreem, no, because the way they swipe in and out, there's a little bit of a problem. So no, it can't be a strength. Guys, please, if you're taking your exams as a computer-based exam, you need to log on to your platform. This is what I've done right now. Let's see if you can see this. Yes. So I've logged on from the passwords that you were sent. I have logged on to that, and I just wanted to let you know, those of you who were asking, how do I put in 3 columns? This is a risk question. Ignore that. Assuming I have to give my answer in 3 columns, or even for risk and risk response, I will, by the way, do this with you on the last day. I will do this with you on the last day, but you go on table, you can insert a table, and you can start working on it accordingly. So I've inserted a 2-columnar table because I only want to look at audit risk and risk response. So I type in audit risk and type in auditor's response. And then I can start typing in the answers. I've only added 1 row and 2 columns, but you can just insert that and start typing in your answers. So it's pretty easy, to be honest. So those of you who were worried about how to insert a column, this is really simple. I'll do this with you on the last day, guys. So examiner has very given specific instructions on which of these I want you to use. So I'll talk about which of these she wants you to use, and the rest that you can pretty much ignore when you're doing your exam question. So I will talk about this in detail on the last day. Do not worry about this, but please make sure that you guys try and access the platform so you can check this. So if you remember, you were given all this information. You can access this. You already have practice questions. After today, you will have more practice questions added as well. So all of that will be there. I'm opening up the chat box to see if you have any questions. All right, guys, tomorrow is a very important day. It is possibly one of the most difficult days of your F8 webinar because we are going to be doing substantive procedures. So we are going to be doing substantive procedures. I will be telling you the technique. I'm going to try and cover some areas with small examples as well. Everyone hates substantive procedures, but I'll try and make it easy for you tomorrow. Okay? Also, guys, please make sure that all your substantive testing is prepared from your knowledge summary. And tomorrow I'll be doing short questions with you from the exam. So I'll keep telling you the technique as well. Okay? We have plenty of time. You can easily get through the F8 exam with proper preparation. Thank you so much, guys. I will inshallah see you tomorrow. Thank you for being an interactive audience. Thank you, Neha, and may Allah bless you as well. Thank you.